be posted on our website and MACo's website. If there are people in your organization that weren't able to participate, they can watch this video at a later time and get the content. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Mr. Bryson and his team.
Thank you, Mr. Clark, and thanks for everybody for participating again. I always expect these to be pretty short and sweet. And as I said, I think 2 weeks ago, we are winding down to the waning days of the legislative session. And as I said last week, that means that people are getting grouchy and things are getting interesting up there. I think I tipped you off on House Bill 632 is an interesting bill to pay attention to. I'm going to spend some time and talk about that, especially as it moved its way through the House, off the House floor and into the Senate side. But because we were talking about it earlier and you guys might be curious, House Bill 694 by Representative Gist is a bill trying to address non-compliance issues with special districts. It has been, again, the number is HB 694. In the House Local Government Committee this session, there was a number of bills that were trying to address operational deficiencies and financial deficiencies for special districts. I joked before, but it seems to be always something in Cascade County's area. But you all have these examples: water and sewer boards, independent districts. They could be health districts, they could be fire districts, where your constituents come to you as county commissioners and say they're not doing something right, or they're not holding meetings, or they're not taking public comment, and it ultimately always seems like they want you commissioners to try and fix those problems. We have opposed bills in the past that specifically put all special district compliance and oversight on the Board of County Commissioners, and we did again so in a couple of different situations this year. But this bill 694, Representative Gist wanted to do something that looked more like he described it as a carrot and stick approach. Find a positive intervention for dysfunctional operations in special districts, get the resources necessary to do some basic training for those volunteers that serve on special districts, and then if they're still not in compliance, have some accountability. And so he had several versions of this bill drafted, and then he asked, so I ended up helping him to try and really focus on the carrot approach and not the stick approach. And luckily for all of us, we threw Dan Clark and the MSU Local Government Center in as the intervener for complaints that might come from citizens. There's a petition process or a complaint process that would require 5% of the citizens within the district boundaries to allege some operational bad practice, i.e. you're not conducting your meetings, you're not taking public comment, you're not complying with what your statutory duties are for the board. You could bring a complaint forward to the Department of Administration, the county attorney, the county commissioners, and that would potentially initiate an intervention by Dan Clark and his staff to come and do their board training, roles and responsibilities, and general governance as a requirement for the board, the special district board, to participate in. Now, you'll all recognize that leading a horse to water doesn't necessarily make them drink, and that's the issue. It's going to be an intervention that allows for the training to be delivered and hopefully absorbed.
Good afternoon.
And then use. And if that doesn't work, and again, the cost associated with that training would be borne initially by Department of Administration, Local Government Services Bureau, but paid back by the special district. So the state general fund is made whole, MSU Local Government Center will get compensated, and the penalty in that area would be that the special district would be paying for the cost of that training. I still don't think of that as punishment, and I do absolutely think of that as a positive intervention. Additionally, you could make claims that you as a resident or an interested party, you could make claims that the special district isn't doing their annual financial report or audit compliance and the financial accountability portion of it, which again goes to Department of Administration. And we didn't build in an additional penalty in that respect because we're going to use this as a pilot project for the next 2 years. Let's see how many times we can trigger Dan Clark and the MSU Local Government Center's intervention on a positive foot before we start talking about penalties. But we did put a provision that modifies the definition of official misconduct. So I saw Well, I'll leave it at that. There is an anonymous member here that I've been discussing the official misconduct with as it relates to the autonomous independent boards that are out there. If a board member never shows up, are they committing official misconduct? If you never do the job, but you won't resign, so there can't be a vacancy, you can't get the board member replaced because they hold an elected office, but they still never do the work, or even worse, they never convene meetings, so the chair never calls the meetings to order, they're not adopting budgets, they're never doing their job. Is there anything you can do about it? And we have always said that if an egregious situation happens, official misconduct might be the place for your county attorneys to look. So we've added language, the official misconduct statute in this bill, that says failure of a board of a local government entity as defined in section 6. So it includes all special districts except school boards, boards of county commissioners, and city and town councils. All other districts are included in that definition. So failure of the board of a local government entity to convene regular meetings in compliance with any adopted bylaw or statutory requirement may constitute official misconduct under this section if the failure is regular, repeated, and negatively impacts the opportunity for meaningful public participation or for the operation or function of a local government entity as defined in section 6. So if they're not holding public meetings, they're not taking public comment, they're not convening regularly as required, board members can be charged with official misconduct, thus they can be removed from office. The intent is not to criminalize unwilling volunteers. Frankly, for me, it's to incentivize folks that don't want to do the job on a volunteer basis to submit their resignations. And if they won't, so the replacement process can't happen as it needs to happen, the threat of official misconduct, I think, is going to be enough to trigger those resignations to come as they need to come. I still look at the bill entirely as a carrot approach and not a stick approach, but people are pretty nervous about that definition of official misconduct. For Yellowstone County, it also includes the provisions on Title 85 that says that if a vacancy occurs in the Board of Commissioners and no other member of the board exists to act or elect a qualified elector to fill a vacancy, the Board of County Commissioners of the county within the territory, the district shall appoint members. Talked about specifically for that provision in code. So it's 3 unique different sections that I think fit together really well. And this passed the House on 3rd reading yesterday, 99-0. I'll include Dan in this discussion, but any questions, comments, or concerns about HB 694 and special district operations? Right, we're good to go. Dan, you did your analysis about the number of deficiencies in special districts as it relates to their financial audit and compliance reporting. One of the things that's built in here that I didn't question your numbers on is that really for the financial reporting portion of it, it takes 2 years of delinquencies before you would, the allegation of inappropriate behavior triggers the intervention. So since this has got a sunset deadline on it for 2 years, I don't expect you to get overwhelmed with referrals, but I do expect there'll be a number of referrals from counties and from citizens engaging your positive board training, roles and responsibilities curriculum over the next 2 years.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to it.
Let's talk 632. I'm going to try and share my screen now.
Don't hurt yourself.
This will be interesting.
Tough laughing.
There we go.
All right, you can see my white paper. All right. So I've broken down a couple of sections in House Bill 632. For background purposes, House Bill 632 is the legislature and started in House Appropriations. So it's the Appropriations Committee bill to spend the ARPA funds, the American Recovery Plan, America's Recovery Plan. I think that's what it stands for. And I think I said this before, but I'm going to continue to refer to it. The chair of House Judiciary, because it's federal, puts an F in front of it. So this is the FARPA plan. In 632 under section, I think it's section 4 is the local government section. This is the language that's used to describe how they intend to fund, how they intend to distribute money to the local governments. There's a formulary basis. So let me back up for a second. When the appropriations committee was considering how to divvy out $150 million to local governments, they wanted to do it in a grant process. So, and they wanted to do it in a general sense that would allow for the expenditures to be eligible as determined by Treasury. Remember, they're writing a bill. I mean, you can debate it, but it's somewhere between 1.9 and $3 billion that's coming to the state of Montana through FARPA. And so they're trying to write a bill before they have guidance from Treasury about what allowable uses would be. And they carved out $150 million to get to local governments. And they want to do it through a grant process that's going to be easy to administer. And so they basically put the $150 million out. And then they thought, well, we got to have a formula to make local governments eligible. And local governments under this section is pretty limited in cities, counties, towns, and not special districts, which we'll get to in just a minute. The Treasury guidance that we know of right now, and again, this is going to be further clarified when the Treasury issues guidance, is that you can use the money that's coming directly to counties from the U.S. Treasury to respond to COVID-19 emergencies. There's language or there's guidance preliminarily out there about how you can use it to offset the economic impacts, aid to households, small businesses, nonprofits, and industries such as tourism and hospitality. That will be further clarified by Treasury. But the big emphasis behind the local government money that you're getting directly from Treasury is to mitigate COVID-19. And then specifically, making investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. We know those are going to be allowable expenses. You can do revenue losses as a reduction from COVID-19. That's less clear about how that would work. And I think the examples we've talked about in the past is if you had to cancel some of your major events like your county fair or rodeo events that you generated money historically on, I think you're going to be able to repay yourself that lost revenue. But don't quote me on that because I want to wait for the Treasury guidance to come out. The reason I'm talking about this is because in the bill on 632, they've put money aside. The $150 million is what they're calling infrastructure grants. But they put money aside in section 2 of the bill for water and wastewater, further bills, and in 632, there's additional money for broadband. In our initial inquiries, and we had a call with the National Association of Counties, included the White House's Intergovernmental Affairs Director and the person at Treasury who's going to be responsible for issuing the guidance and the compliance monitoring for FARPA funds, it's becoming really clear that traditional infrastructure is not going to be an allowable use for your direct allocation Treasury money through ARPA. We might be persuasive enough to extend that definition on what COVID-19 response looks like to certain infrastructure investments, but like roads and bridges, I think are going to be all but ruled out. And I think you heard that from Senator Tester 2 weeks ago. But the state money has different restrictions. And frankly, there are lighter restrictions on a pot of money that the state is getting for infrastructure. And if they're going to use that money in 632 to make infrastructure grants eligible for local governments, then I want you guys to be really careful about what you think you're going to have available for matching funds. Because 632 puts $150 million out to local governments, requires a dollar for dollar match up to 25% of what your federal direct allocation would be, I think.
Dollar for dollar or 25% is the greater of.
The greater of a dollar for dollar or 25%, right? So if you have whatever your allocation is on the formula from Treasury, if you use up to 25% of that with your match with the state money, then you've satisfied the match requirement. But it's dollar for dollar up to 25%.
Greater of the two.
Eric,
Dollar for dollar, or you pay dollar for dollar. If your 25% is more, you pay 25%.
I think it's the, go ahead, Chantel.
can you use your ARPA funds? Could a county use their ARPA funds as match for an ARPA grant through the state?
That's what we're going to get to. So that he's showing me the document right. The local government shall pledge the greater of a 1-to-1 match or 25%. Why would you ever be 25%?
Well, if you're a Yellowstone County and you're going to put it on a small project,
Yeah.
but you get $3 million in ARPA money.
Yeah.
You're gonna put 25% of that 3 million to basically fund the whole project. It's an awful, terrible match requirement
I think the greater is always gonna be dollar for dollar.
most of the time.
We'll have that clarified. And again, the bill is subject to some change. So Chantel, to your point. Federal matching to federal matching is a question that Treasury is going to issue guidance on. I think it's going to be eligible. And I think it was in the intent of the bill and the work that was done in the Senate to make sure that counties got direct allocations, knowing that some of this money would flow down through projects that you would be able to match federal to federal. It's important when you're thinking about federal lands access projects or other federal funding sources that you might want to use this match for. I believe that federal to federal match is going to be allowable, but we'll wait for the Treasury guidance to be clear. This money in 632 is federal money too. So when the state says we want you to match dollar for any projects you apply for this 150 million, it's my expectation that you'll be able to use your Treasury money. Your direct Treasury money is matched. So if you have a large scale water and sewer project, water and sewer is eligible for your money and water and sewer is eligible on the state money, then you'll be able to match those to be able to do the project. I hope that's the way that it works. Where it becomes more difficult is that the definition and allowable uses of the funds for the state are going to be different than what you have as allowable uses. And this is from the press release from the Treasury Department. They're talking about investment in education, moving online, eliminating the divide between rural and urban America. You can take critical steps to address infrastructure challenges laid bare by the pandemic. Low to moderate income communities, helping to ensure that all communities have access to high quality modern infrastructure needed to thrive, including internet. Now, 632 has 150 million directly, or 150 million distributed to cities, towns, and counties, a section for broadband, and a section for water and wastewater. And you're limited to be able to use your money for COVID-19 response costs, water and wastewater, and broadband. So the question is, what are you going to be able to use the 150 million match for? And I'm not sure. We'll have to wait for Treasury guidance. And I don't want to make it seem like that you wouldn't be grateful for having this money available, but if the restrictions are such that you can't match it with your federal funds, just be cautious about thinking that there's a windfall.
But
And then
Eric, question on that, on this matching fund, can if we have to match that, can we use our CARES money from last year?
Yes. Your CARES money has been whitewashed. It's your money. It doesn't have any federal identifier left with it.
Perfect.
So yes, you'll have match money for certain projects that won't have the restrictions. Good point. I want to talk about the formula for distribution of the 150 million really quick. And again, I want to make sure that this doesn't come across as cities and counties and towns complaining or whining about it. But in the deliberations that happened somewhere in appropriations, an amendment was placed on the floor when 632 hit the floor last Tuesday that amended the distribution to reference the gas tax formula, right? So I think there were conversations about making the distribution similar to Barca in that a local government would make a request, tell the state how you intend to use it, get the money, and then show that you used it for the intended purpose. That's where that thought came from. But that led the appropriators to think, well, let's just then make the money available on the gas tax allocation formula. And of those of you that know the gas tax allocation formula know that it's heavily weighted towards cities and towns. 62% of the gas tax gets distributed to cities and towns. 38% of it gets distributed to the counties. And that the metrics for the distribution is different on the city side and the county side, in that a growing population city and a growing eligible road mile city doesn't take money away from the county side, and the same is true for the counties. The counties bundle is over here, and road miles and population impacts how you get that money, and the city's money is over here. 38% county, 62% city. That's important because the definition of local government is cities, towns, and counties. All the special districts, all your irrigation districts, all your water and sewer districts, all of your ambulance districts, fire districts, medical districts, all of those special districts that want access to these funds will have to come through the county door. Not the city door with the 62%, the county door with the 38%. I have been nicely and patiently asking if the appropriations folks did that on purpose or if they just used bad language in talking about the language in 632 says in the same proportion as that provision in Title 15, the gas tax distribution. I don't think the appropriators meant to carve out a 62-38% split. But because it happened on the House floor on Tuesday, and I started bugging appropriation members Tuesday and Wednesday and staff, and I finally got the staff spreadsheet on Thursday of last week that showed that that was the formula that they're breaking it out in. The first chance we had to ask about that was in Senate Finance and Claims on Tuesday of this week, Tuesday or Wednesday. That was the first hearing that it had. And so I just went to the podium, thanked them, and asked the question if it was an intentional split. And that has caused some hurt feelings among the appropriations folks, and I'm leaving it at that. I don't know how to address that other than the formula as it works right now and carving out money for eligible cities, towns, and counties is based on the gas tax split of 62% and 38%. And then each entity, each county, for example, has a direct dollar amount that you're going to be eligible for award based on that 38% split. And where it gets problematic, all the special districts have to come through the county door to access any of these funds, which will still require a cash match. Any questions on 632?
And remember, the districts are not getting a direct allocation like the cities, towns, and counties. So guess where they're gonna ask for help for match?
We're gonna unshare. There has to be some question.
So this is Jim. My question would be, if all those special districts have to come through the county, they're going to use up all of that money before the county gets a chance, are they not?
You will have to sponsor their application, and then you'll have to work out who's going to provide the match. You're going to have to endorse. They won't get access to that pot of money without the county sponsoring their request. So they're going to have to come to you first.
So I talked to the conservation district folks this morning, and I said, you need to be advocating for no match requirement, because if you have to ask the county for match, because you don't have it, and the counties use their money for other eligible projects, you're not gonna get any of the money. So, we all know that those conservation districts that came to us during CARES Act, they don't have any cash. So I've told them to advocate to get that dollar for dollar match ripped out of there.
So I have a question, this is Ross. Both pots of money are still governed by the same treasury requirements, right? I mean, basically, or no?
No. So the state is using an infrastructure pot that has different treasury guidance than the direct treasury money that's given to you. Yours is more limited than theirs.
Okay, so their money is going to be more open but are we going to be able to do roads and bridges with their money?
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be that expansive, but they'll be able, their pot of money is specifically for infrastructure.
Okay, but I mean, that's where I struggle with it is, okay, it's for infrastructure, but county's infrastructure is road and bridges. So
yeah.
I'm questioning what the hell that's, I mean, you don't want to sound, look a gift horse in the mouth kind of thing, but I'm questioning where we're going to get a lot of value out of this if we're just trying to make up stuff that fits their model. I mean, are we going to be able to do like building projects or something with it?
Commissioner, one of the things that I've talked about, especially in light of our conversation at conference, is if a city and county wanted to go in together and apply for a pot of money for an expansion of water, wastewater, or broadband as a subdivision was moving forward. So you could buy down some of the infrastructure costs. I think that kind of example will be an allowable use of these funds, and that you'll be able to match with your treasury dollar. That's the kind of project I think will be eligible for.
So irrigation districts, did I understand that there might be some work for, some ditch work that you could do with it?
I believe that irrigation districts are going to be allowable expense in both the state money and yours, yes.
And that's still a one-to-one match though?
If you're applying for the state money through 632 dollar for dollar match.
There is no match requirement on the money you get there.
Say that again, Jason.
No match requirement on the money that's coming direct to you. The only match requirement is on if you want to supplement that with additional state dollars.
Okay, and do you believe that that money coming directly at us would go for a ditch project?
Yes, I think that's gonna be eligible under the generic water and wastewater category.
Okay,
Please let us wait for guidance before you sign contracts.
Yeah. There's a move afoot on the Senate side to also address the St. Mary's project as a line item in this bill, and if they don't get that, that likely will be I mean, a bunch of counties could go together and make that an eligible project, but it's gonna require that cash match. So there's still a lot of flexibility on the ditch side of things and irrigation side of things.
And the reason is the actual legislation mentions water and wastewater infrastructure. It specifically uses those words, which allows for a lot more latitude. It does not mention roads or bridges, which is why we're struggling to get anybody to say that that will be an option. And it also calls out broadband.
Looks like Commissioner Reelbird has a question.
Hi, good afternoon now. Just seeing if the 20% reduction for the local health mandates is still on the bill, or is that going to come off?
It is on and it is not likely to come off. It seems to me, the reading between the lines is that was a compromise from the folks in appropriations to be able to get any money out to local governments.
Okay.
And I guess
Yeah.
if you want to put it on the lighter side, if you have a larger project that you want to multiply your dollars for, you still get 80 cents on the dollar, and you know that's at least something.
So inflated?
Palatable, but that helps at least to think about it that way instead of thinking about losing 20%. You're going to gain 80%.
Could you just apply for 20% more?
Maybe. So what we don't, looks like if you're gonna match dollar for dollar, then they'll reduce their allocation by 20. But most importantly, folks, I think it's intended to be on a go forward basis. And this came up in Senate Finance and Claims. I don't think that language was intended to be retroactive. So if you've ever had any restrictions more restrictive than the states, that you'd be ineligible, and they're gonna try and clarify that through a series of amendments on the Senate side. If that's the case, and we're doing a good job with vaccinations, and we're getting close to herd immunity, and restrictions have been dropping across the state, I don't know that it's going to be much to worry about. But
Commissioner Reelbird, we talked about this, and yeah, in your particular county, the restrictions will probably be in place longer than some, so it will most likely impact you.
And Commissioner Butcher, to your point, I'm trying to be really sensitive of this notion that we're kicking a gift horse in the mouth. All I'm doing is trying to ask questions and say, if 150 million is available, let's make it available in a way that can be used easily and for really good projects we can be proud of in the future. And I'll leave it at that. If they keep the formula the way that they do it, and the match and the penalty, it's still 150 million that they're going to give out for intended good uses. Other questions on 632?
So the special districts, when they flow through us or the counties, is it going to be awarded to the county and then we have to do the federal grant requirements and everything?
Absolutely. And know this, that you'll be the financial agent responsible for all compliance monitoring. So you're going to have sub-recipient agreements in place that are pretty ironclad that if somebody's misusing the funds, you're going to be on the hook for it. So you need to have clawback provisions or something in place, because you won't be able to give that fiduciary responsibility away to sub-recipients.
So do you have to accept their requests then, I guess?
No, nothing can make a county apply on behalf of any other entity. And I think that's what the problem is going to be, frankly.
Especially if there's match requirement, they don't have any.
So question, refresh me on this one, you guys. If we ask for some of that money, the 150 million pot is a grant. If they're eligible projects, we can only use up to 25% of our direct payments as match money. Is that how you're working that?
No, it says you match it dollar for dollar. The greater of dollar for dollar or 25% of your federal, which is nonsensical. They're gonna match it dollar for dollar.
Dollar for dollar. So anything we get from the 150 pot, we can use our other money or our money to, as match.
So let's do a concrete example. Beaverhead County Ambulance Service wants to buy a new ambulance. You can spend half of your treasury money direct and apply for the other half through this grant project for the state. So you get your ambulance for half of your money and half of their money.
That's where I hate this match requirement, because Beaverhead County, if you get $2 million and your ambulance costs 250,000, the way I read this, you can't use the state money, because your 25% of your 2 million is gonna be $500,000, and that's the greater of. So you gotta do a great big project.
I'm not sure that's intentional, folks.
I mean, it's awful.
That's where I was confused when you just said that, Jason. You can't use more than 25% of that money for match.
No, it says you have to use 25% of the money you get direct, the check that's gonna drop into your account, or a dollar for dollar match, whichever is greater. So if Beaverhead County gets $2 million in a direct allocation, and you wanna do an ambulance for $250,000, 25% of your 2 million is $500,000. That's greater than 1-to-1 match by, it would double the, by 2 and still not get it. So you would not, in that scenario, according to the way this language is written, I don't think you're eligible to go after the state pot for that project. You wouldn't get any money.
That can't, and so, frankly, the math doesn't work. That can't be the way that they were intended. Yellowstone County, I think, is you're on pace for what, 24 million? So what they're saying is that you have to use 25% of your 24 million for a project before you're eligible for $1 in state matching. I don't think that's the way that the bill sponsors intended it, but that's the way that it reads.
It looks like Mark Peterson's got a question there.
Good.
Go ahead, Mark. Oh, you're on mute, Mark, or we can't hear you. Looks like you're off mute. Can you have a volume button? There, you're off mute now.
While he's working on that, Commissioner Miskey asked if it's first come, first served. No, the formula for gas tax will distribute it, so there's a dollar amount set aside for each city, town, and county. I see a weird icon in Peterson's box. Is that?
If you don't ask for your allocation based on that BARSA formula by 2023, December 31st, 23, it reverts into a grant pool.
So, and remember, your money from Treasury comes after you submit a plan to U.S. Treasury about how you're going to use it, and you only get half the money up front. So if the state expects you to use 25% or greater of your Treasury money, and you only get 50% of it up front, I mean, this is going to be difficult for you to use any of this 150 million, as Ross said.
Well, I'm not sure what's going on with Mark's volume or his speakers there, microphone, but Mark, if you want to try to type something in the chat box, that might help. While Mark's trying to figure that out, is anyone else got any other questions?
I'll turn to Chantel for an update on her stuff, and then we'll do Jason while you're thinking of more questions. But the big bill of the day is the 632.
Okay.
All right, well, I don't have too much in terms of elections. House Bill 406, which is BIPA 2.0, the Ballot Interference Protection Act. That one is still sitting in Senate State Administration, waiting executive action. I will probably be calling upon you to contact your senators and have them oppose that if we can't get it amended, because as written, it's just going to cost millions of dollars. It's impossible to implement in an effective and cheap manner. So still waiting on that. We do have an amendment in that committee that we're just hoping that Senator Kerry will put on there, but so far he's really hard to get to commit to anything. So I'm not too hopeful on that one. Just overarching updates. The Senate had House Bill 2 on the floor yesterday. They did pass it on second reading, and then they proceeded to pass it on third reading right after that. So House Bill 2 was amended and kicked right out. They expect it to go to a conference committee. So be expecting the House to go ahead and shoot down those amendments and a conference committee to be appointed on House Bill 2. I'd imagine that that will happen with 632 as well. I heard them mention it in committee today in Senate Finance and Claims that all these bills will probably go to conference committees just to make sure that everything is in line and ready to go. The next big transmittal deadline is next Friday. It's the transmittal for general bills with amendments. So all House bills sitting on the Senate side that have amendments on them will need to get kicked over to the House by next Friday. And same with the Senate bills sitting in the House. So next week is going to be another busy week. This week was a little wild, and so was last week because we're just running into these transmittal deadlines, and they'll just keep coming as we get closer to the end. Lots of talk about the session adjourning early. Don't get excited. I've only seen it happen once where they left maybe 2 days early, so I don't have high hopes for that. I think that's all. Oh, one last thing. Monday, you guys should have gotten your SRS payments, your Federal Forest Reserve payments. We will be updating our big spreadsheet on the website, but you should have everything that you need already through an email that was sent by DOR. And that's it.
Thank you, Chantel. I'll have Jason.
Okay, related to House Bill 2, some of you, or hopefully all of you, saw the alert to reach out to your senators related to pulling an amendment back off that Senator Lang had put on House Bill 2 that related to our Daniels County bill. He put that on to try and leverage some folks with the promise that if it didn't work, he would pull it back off. He held to his promise and removed his own amendment because it was an amendment that we absolutely, well, scared the life out of me. I wasn't going to take any chances, which is why the outreach. It did come off of House Bill 2, 50-0 yesterday, so that is averted. But I will tell you that that was Senator Lang put his name on it, but he put his name on it late. It originated with a different senator, and so I think that's our warning shot that we need to be very cognizant that entitlement share will be discussed. Maybe in front of us, but most likely not in front of us, and we all need to be watching for the bills that come to enact House Bill 2 and make sure there's nothing buried in there that goes after our entitlement share. But that little shot across the bow has been averted. The Daniels County bill is still alive in the House, and Senator Lang will continue to pursue that. Senate Bill 260, I don't know if Tara's on. See her, is what we're referring to as the takings bill. What it basically says right now is that if we do a land use decision or an ordinance or some other action that a landowner thinks has devalued their property 25%, they can sue. And it's an arbitrary number that we think is going to land us in court. We're trying to kill that. We did some outreach right away and that stalled it up. And I've heard that they're looking to amend it, but that bill makes us very nervous. And an example would be if House Bill 302, which is the one that allows the commissioners to disallow wild bison in their county because of health and safety reasons. If you decided to do that and the people that own the ground where those wild bison were at decided that took 25% or more of their value away from their property, they could sue you. And that's one example. And then I think you can go right down the list to any kind of zoning, even subdivision regulations probably could be construed as too restrictive and you could get sued for that. So we're trying to at minimum fix that thing, but most likely trying to kill it. So if anybody asks about Senate Bill 260, as of right now, we don't like it, please kill it. House Bill 661 is another bill we're trying to kill. It got through the House. What it does is it changes the tax rate on stripper wells. The impact to counties with those is about 850 grand-ish. And so we are fighting that with the oil, gas, and coal counties. For those of you that have stripper wells in your counties, it's going to impact you financially. Please help us reach out. And then we are on Senate Bill 284, which is the gravel bill. We did get contacted, or the senator got contacted on some concerns about the sage grouse language in there. I need to do some outreach today on that. We'll follow up. That is my short list. Oh, one more. House Bill 11, which is the Treasure State Endowment Program. On the House side, in subcommittee, we tried to get an amendment put on it that would allow you to start work on a project after you've submitted your application at your own risk. But it got passed out of the subcommittee, but did not get put on in full approach. So today we testified, we're going to try and get that put on in finance and claims. So for those of you with a senator that serves in finance and claims, they will take executive action on Monday. If you would drop a note in support of that amendment that allows that latitude to local governments to get started early. It's a cost-saving measure. The example I use of a real-world spot where we could use it for bridges is if you had a DOT weight limit on a bridge and you went through the planning process, but the farmers and ranchers were still using it, and then you were getting ready to submit your application and DOT came in and said, you need to close that bridge, you may be very motivated to get started, okay? But you still don't want to leave your grant money on the table. This would enable you to still submit, then get started, and it would save you a year on having that bridge closed. That's the example I used. It seemed to resonate. I think we'll get it passed, but a little bit of leaning from you folks would not hurt.
So it looks like we've got a couple of questions that Mark was able to type into the chat here. Can counties use the funds on water projects such as levees? And those funds, could counties loan those funds to other places and projects such as the St. Mary's Reclamation Project? So those are two of the questions I think that circle back to Eric's discussion.
I'm glad that his mic doesn't work, but I wish his keyboard didn't work either. The issue of what's going to be eligible in terms of water projects, this is still a little bit unknown. I think in general, can counties use funds on water projects such as a levee? Possibly. The more it gets removed from distributing water and treating water, might be subject to a little bit closer look from Treasury. So I would hold off on inking that one or letting the ink dry on that thought until we get some further guidance from Treasury. So I'm going to say maybe on that one. We are really, and MACo is really pushing to try and make sure that the funds that you guys get can get out to your economic development agencies and possibly convert into revolving loan funds or more permanent sources of funding for all kinds of things. The generic language that Treasury's talked about is in terms of COVID-19 response for the public sector could include revolving loan projects, or I'll make an argument that says projects such as St. Mary's provides a huge economic benefit and would be good towards the recovery of Montana's economy. So in general, I think yes, but the details about how you would structure loans, especially a group of counties getting together to try and fund some of that large scale St. Mary's project, might be the devil might be in the details on that, but I think there's a strong possibility you'll be able to convert your dollars to loans and then loan them out for purposes that might be like that.
And the guidance from NACo does say that you can provide grants to employers. So if you're thinking of the farmers that are using the irrigation system as businesses, maybe. So there might be a couple of options.
But keep both of those, Commissioner, in the back of your mind. Those are both two good suggestions. One, I think we need to wait for some better Treasury guidance on.
Okay, we've got a question from Chris Westergaard. Go ahead, Chris.
What's the number on that stripper bill one? I didn't catch that.
House Bill 661. It's Representative Kazmier's. It's originated up in the Toole County area. It caught wings on a basis on the house side, and it jumped through the house floor and over to approach, and we were getting dragged by its tail. So our hope is to do something about it. Originally, it had both stripper oil wells and it had gas wells in it. We did get the gas amended out, which cut the fiscal note to counties in half, but it's still, you know, approaching $1 million impact to, you know, 25 counties or so. Richland and Fallon will eat the lion's share.
Other questions, comments, complaints? Wow, black group today.
It's nice.
Mr. Clark, I'm turning it back over to you with an expectation that we'll be doing this again in a couple of weeks.
That's correct. We have it scheduled again for, I think, later this month. Yeah, I want to say we're scheduled for the 23rd of April will be our next session or town hall meeting. We do appreciate your participation. We hope that this has been helpful for you. I don't think we'll have Treasury guidance by the 23rd. I think it's going to be closer middle of May, but I'm sure there'll be kind of a continued rundown of the legislative session. So if there aren't any other questions or, oh, go ahead, Mr. McGee. Are you just waving goodbye? You got a question, Mike?
No, I got a question. This direct allocation from the feds, they said they were going to be spending half of it within 60 days. Are we supposed to be writing some kind of a plan to do that, or is it coming automatic, or what? Or where are we at? Are we just supposed to stall until the ink dries and all this stuff?
You will have to submit something that looks like your plan for expenditure to be able to get your half the money up front. I don't think it's going to be detailed, but Treasury's not come out with even a framework for what that request is going to look like. So I want you to start thinking about projects you might get.
Are we supposed to be doing that? If they were going to send money in 60 days or no?
Their timing's going to get screwed up. I think they're about 35 days into their 60 days that they're supposed to get the money out, but I think what they'll do is redefine it and say 60 days after request.
Commissioner, I think what you should be doing is generally have an idea of what types of what projects you would want to use the money for. And then when the guidance comes out and we can confirm that those are eligible, then we would have you write up your request, which we don't think is going to be complicated at all. So the big heavy lift is where are you thinking you want to spend your money on, and then we need to confirm it's going to be eligible.
Yeah, that's sort of where I agree with Ross. They won't let us spend it for what we need, so I don't know what to do with it. So, all right.
You can host a whole lot of training for the local government center.
Hey, I got you there, Dan.
There is a question here. This will be posted on our website, the recording, and Chantel, it's going to be posted. Is she gone? I think it'll be posted on MACo's website. I think there's a link or a button there. Yeah. Another question here that came up on the chat. Where do the matching funds go?
Into your project?
To the project.
Yeah.
Eric, this is Jerry. I have a question. Sounds to me like little old counties like Garfield, there ain't no sense even messing with this stuff.
Commissioner, I'm trying to be positive and optimistic.
Thanks.
Commissioner, you own your health center, right?
Yes, we do.
I think we could probably find some avenues for you to expend your funds.
I mean, our health center's been helped quite a little by the past year with all the COVID money, but I guess maybe one of the things that I've been stewing on listening to you guys is maybe a revolving loans for trying to give to businesses if they want to expand or whatever.
I'll give you an example, things to think about. One of the things the state's doing in supplanting what they have as planned expenditures with ARPA funds is HVAC systems. So renovations that they had planned, new building construction that they had contemplated, they're going to spend their federal funds on their entire HVAC system, through upgrades or new construction. They're also going to make sure that they get fiber and cable into all their buildings that they want with their federal funds. They're going to use their federal funds for their existing buildings for planned expenditures that they had out in the future and just shift dollars around. You can do the same. I think I saw Commissioner McCormick, you just renovated your jail and put a bunch of money. A portion of that project was, I'm sure, HVAC upgrades. I think you'll be able to pay yourself back for those. So think of those examples that you had as costs incurred in the last 12 months or in planned expenditures you have in the future that you'll be able to use this money for.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Then there's another question here about any thoughts when the 5 applications will be okayed. I'm not sure what that's referring to, but maybe you do.
The CARES money. I was told that they were done and they distributed all the money. Diane, get a hold of us afterwards. I got notice late last night that the local government services bureau was celebrating the final distributions that were made yesterday.
So how come the state doesn't give us that 100 million that the last administration took away from 300 but down to 200?
They spent it on nothing else.
Well, I heard that there was a lot of interest grown on that money, so I'm just curious.
There'll be a reconciliation. The legislature's curious to know how the CARES Act 1, 2, and 3 was spent. They don't know yet, and they're itching to tell. And when that happens, we'll find out what happened to that extra 100 million.
And Commissioner McLean, I'll drop a note to D of A and ask where your application is at.
Missoula County's questioning whether we have to have a plan ahead of time. I want to be certain in all of our conversations with Treasury, White House, and MACo, you don't need a concrete plan about what you're going to spend the money on, like a grant application, but you need an outline to be able to justify the release of half of the funds. That's the standard that Treasury has been telling us from the get-go. And you'll get half of your money released, an outline of how you intend to use them.
Looks like Dan Ellison has a question about Senate Bill 231. You want to go ahead, Dan?
Dan, the Jefferson County Commissioners want to thank Eric for his work on that bill. That's the family transfer bill. It was problematic in House Natural Resources, and he got the amendment put on it, and that made the bill a whole lot better than it had been. But now it's showing up for second reading, but being withheld for past consideration. Eric, wondering if you have any further information about that bill.
I have not talked to Mr. Taylor or the bill sponsor, but we were told after that last round of negotiations, nobody else would be able to make any changes. If normally what they do when they do past consideration is somebody's trying to monkey with it, and I've not heard. And I thank you for those comments. I get real nervous when people put me in the middle of negotiating deals on land use bills. So I'm glad I make somebody happy. Yeah.
Well, the commissioners are a lot happier than they were. And it isn't that Jefferson County is monkeying with the bill that's got it onto past consideration. We're just watching it with some interest.
I'm glad. I'll pay attention now. But I think if anybody was going to try and do something significant to it, Taylor has an obligation to tell me that. So I wouldn't be too concerned.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't see any. Go ahead.
Build up.
Well, I don't see any other hands up, and I don't see any other comments. Did anyone else have a question or a thought or a comment they'd like to make before we wrap this up?
Well, I'll say thanks, everybody. And maybe you've noticed we don't have to sit right next to each other anymore because we got this fancy new computer camera system that will follow our voices around, so we don't have to sit like twins.
Which is really weird because I'm not looking at the computer screen when I'm talking, so it feels like you shouldn't be able to see me, but I know you can.
Technology. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thank you. We'll see everyone in a couple weeks.
Thank you.